Señores y señoras, today on the podcast is Melissa Ross, and she's a radio talk show host of a public, how do you speak English again? She has a radio program on WJXT, WJCT. I forget which is which. One of them is a TV network, part of the network. Another one is the radio station. But she's on 89.9 on the FM dial in Jacksonville, Florida, and all the way up to Yulee and down to parts of St. Augustine if it reaches. And it's a community-driven talk show. And my daughter just came in right now asking for my attention. So I love her. I need to give her some attention, and she's grunting at me. So check out the show with Melissa Ross. We start off talking about her kids going away to summer camp. We just dive right into it, and we cover a lot of things. And so I hope you enjoy it. And if you enjoy this podcast and you'd like to offer me a tip, I have a tip jar at the podcast website.
The Umbrella Corporation. Our business is life itself. This podcast episode is brought to you by nothing.
Try it for free.
And then you kind of start to like, and then you kind of start to like it for a little while.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe not.
No.
Maybe, yes.
You kind of
I like the fact
feelings.
that I can get things done.
That's what I like about it. If their energy is removed from the house, it helps me focus on other things that I need to do. I'm more efficient if they're not there. But then I feel guilty for feeling good about that, you know. And
you're such a good mother.
And then, but
we're talking about her children being away from the house, by the way.
But then when they come home, you know, by that point I'm really glad that they're back. You know, at least that was my experience that one other time. Yeah. You know, but I have friends who sent their kids to sleepaway camp this summer for 6-8 weeks, and it's a
long time.
A lot of families do that. I just don't think I could ever do that.
Me neither.
I mean, I don't want my kids to be away for that long. That would feel. I wasn't raised with that tradition. A lot of families, I think, even more commonly Northeastern families are, and I'm not from the Northeast.
Where are you from?
The Midwest.
Okay, the Midwest is like Indiana.
Yeah, I grew up in Ohio.
Okay,
but you know, I didn't grow up with that tradition of sleepaway camp. You know, at the most we went away to Girl Scout camp for, you know, a few days. We didn't go away for 6 weeks. I mean,
that is a long time.
But kids do it.
Like that's long enough to where when the kid gets back, they're going to look different. They
look different, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of kids get a lot out of it, though. They learn independence. They learn self-reliance. I'm sure there are a lot of good things and friendships that they make. But yeah, I don't see us doing that.
How old are your kids?
10 and 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have no idea what that's like. I don't know.
Just call me.
I have these. I will.
When it hits, you'll be like, "Where's the wine?" I mean,
Hey, I'm already like that.
I know, me too, actually. But it's been that way for a long time. But
did you want wine? I don't have any wine here.
I know. What's wrong with you? I was promised more than water. No. No, you know, once they hit the teen years, like my older one, once she, you know. And she kind of was a teenager before she was a teenager. It started, you know, 11, 12, the kind of teenage drama and lots of arguments and lots of tears and lots of you don't know anything. And
you don't know
me,
oh,
yeah.
Yeah, you don't. What do you know?
Yeah. My younger daughter still likes me, but that won't. I think that'll be going away pretty soon. You know?
That's so cool. That's such a interesting phase. To be so young and to think that you know everything. And I mean, that is that way for some people all the way through high school, junior high, high school.
Oh, yeah. I was that way. So that I kind of try to laugh because I was the exact same way with my parents. Were you like that with your parents?
I was, in some ways I was. In other ways I wasn't. There's, growing up in the Mexican culture, it's like the dynamics are slightly different, but we did grow up here.
Oh.
So it was like 50-50.
But you had to show more respect, right, to your parents.
Yeah, I had to show more respect. I don't know where that comes from. My wife and I talk about that, where the that innate respect comes from, because it's nobody really teaches it to you. You kind of absorb it from your environment and how everybody else acts.
Yeah.
You know, nobody could stop a fight outside if somebody was fighting outside on my block, except if somebody's mom came out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and everybody would just, they would be like,
wow.
I'm sorry, senora.
Wow.
There's a lot of respect for the woman like that.
Yeah, you wouldn't see that in say this neighborhood. That wouldn't have the same power.
So what does your daughter think, if you don't mind saying, what does your daughter think that she knows more about you? Like what kind of things?
Well, I'm not cool.
Okay.
My music sucks. My cultural references are dumb and silly, and you know, she has to explain things to me. You know that because like last night she was talking about this Netflix show with Winona Ryder that's starting to get popular. It's a new series. I think it's called Stranger Things or something like that. And I know kleptomania. And she was explaining to me. First of all, she's explaining to me about Winona Ryder, and I'm like, yeah, I know who that is. She was talking. I know she was talking about it on the phone with her friend from school, and they were getting all into the discussion about this show, and then she said something like, don't say anything more. I'm so triggered. I'm so triggered. And I'm like, Natalie, what are you talking about? She's like, Mom, you will never understand what being triggered is. I'm like, yeah, I think I know what you mean by that. You know, little things like that.
So how do you feel about the emergence of being triggered?
I can see why people our age just roll their eyes at a lot of this stuff. Like, I need a safe space on my college campus. Like, I can't see a flyer that has a point of view I disagree with on my college campus, or I feel like my safe space has been violated. Yeah. You know, I mean, there's a lot of that kind of, really, people my age, I think, take that attitude. But, because, we were raised, I'm Generation X. We were raised by baby boomers who were, we got a lot of tough love. We grew up with divorce. We grew up with a crappy economy too. We kind of grew up with a lot of the same stuff that I think the millennials are dealing with, but we weren't really allowed to whine about it quite as much. Mm-hmm. Now, on the other hand, younger people, I think, have really pushed the culture in a good way. And I think like, it's a mixed bag.
You mean, right? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But you mean they pushed it in a good way, like with civil rights and
exactly,
and people being recognized.
Sure, all of those issues, and millennials, I think, are like the boomers in the sense that there's such a big generational bulge that they feel the strength of their numbers. Whereas my generation, Generation X, our basic attitude is, we're getting screwed on either end. The boomers have screwed us over, and the millennials are probably going to do the same thing to us. We've grown up with that cynical attitude of we expect to get screwed over all the time, every day, and we really have no patience for anyone else's sensibilities being hurt because we've had to deal with a lot. So people my age, I think, more tend to have that attitude. But I try to be open to, all this stuff because it's really an interesting time to be alive. And it's interesting to work with people coming right out of college, too, and just get their perspectives on stuff. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was in Chicago years ago, there was this news anchor there, and he retired like in his late 70s. He was sort of the dean of Chicago newscasters. And when he retired, he said, that the main thing he liked about coming into work every day was being around all these young people. And, that it kept him young. It kept him vibrant. It kept him questioning about the world. And he didn't become a grumpy old man and a cranky old guy. And, media especially, or tech, or any field music that you're in, you really have to be open to all that energy. And, you can't be too set in your ways. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work at all.
Get off my lawn,
yeah,
kids.
Yeah.
So that guy that you're talking about, he was in what era? Like
Oh yeah, that
same
was like
generation?
that was 90s I think.
So
Yeah.
I find the same type of feeling that I feel. I didn't even realize that right now until you said that right now. That I feel like I'm getting screwed from all over the place. I'm pretty cynical, or what is the other word? Not cynical, but where you're suspicious of everything, like corporate or things like this. And, I don't know what the word is. Skeptical.
I think our generation has that, but we never felt like we had the power to blow the whole system up. We felt like we had to work within that system, or we still do. Millennials seem to have this attitude of, no, we're going to blow this whole thing up. We're going to do things differently.
So,
and that was how the baby boomers came of age too, in Vietnam and all of that. Their attitude toward, the World War II generation was, we're going to blow it all up. And now we're seeing that again, I think, with the people that are just behind you and me.
yeah.
The Gen Xers, I think, kind of inherited the boomer culture, and we felt like we had to sort of work within it, even though we weren't too pleased about a lot of it.
Yeah. So when you work with people, you're working with people at your job, people who just got out of college.
Some.
What are their roles?
It depends. I mean, we have some really talented interns that have come through, young reporters, producers.
Melissa's a radio show host, in case you don't know.
Yeah, and there are people. There's a mix of ages and backgrounds. At WJCT, it's a good group of people.
It looks that way. It feels that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool, and it's a media organization, but it's also a nonprofit organization. So there's a different kind of culture there than you would find in commercial media.
Yeah, and speaking of blowing things up, who are you going to vote for?
Oh yeah, like I'm going to tell you that.
All right. Do you as a radio host, do you feel like you have to remain impartial?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Oh yeah. And
do you find that constricting? Is it like, or do you want to just talk into the microphone and just say what you think?
Oh, you can't. I mean, no, that not have any credibility. I mean, not public media. Look, I mean, public media is beloved and it's respected because these people that built it, again, they were baby boomers. They were trying to build a journalism enterprise that really did not have a profit motive, and that sought only to inform and enlighten and be a public service. And it's kind of seen as anachronistic today and kind of old fashioned, but people take it seriously. I take it seriously. And so our job is to inform and provide a place for discussion and dialogue, but we can't become the story. We can't be bombastic, and we can't be opinion driven, not and facilitate a credible kind of discussion. There are opinion-driven media organizations today, but that's really not what we're trying to do.
Yeah. This show is opinion-driven sometimes.
I know. And you can give yours all day long.
Because nobody cares. So I've been a great fan of public media. Are you familiar with KPFK Pacifica?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love their network. I think that it's that is on the cusp of looking really outdated because they're always doing fund drives.
We do those too, but
not as often as they do.
Not as often. Yeah, we just try to do that a few times a year.
But it's like a lot of Pacifica is like they handed over the studio to the community.
Yeah.
And some of the shows are like, what is going on with this show?
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to come up with a business model that works, You're still operating a business, even though it's a nonprofit one. You've got to have a sound business plan and a fundraising strategy to keep going.
When I ask you about that, about you wanting to, if you ever want to express your opinion on your show, it's I asked that because when I listen to your show, sometimes callers, I don't know how much you agree with them or you don't agree with them, but sometimes they make me very angry, the callers, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is going on here? And I'm trying to pick my words carefully, but I could just say that sometimes they're infuriating, not because of themselves. Like I'm not mad at them. I'm angry that I'm like, what year is this? What? I'm like, what's going on? So I'm like, she must be freaking out right now. Like Melissa Ross. I guess you're too busy to be thinking.
No,
that.
well, how do I say this? I don't freak out. I don't agree with everything people say. Or not just people that kind of call in, but guests that we book. I don't know. I mean, nobody's going to agree with everything. But as I've gotten older, I've gotten more kind of zen about the fact that you have to assume the other person is being intellectually honest. Even if you think they're crazy or stupid or wrong, you have to sort of have goodwill and respect for the other person's point of view. And when you lose that, that's when the country starts to, that's the place we're in now, where the country is so divided and so polarized that people look at people in one party, look at people in the other party as evil, un-American. Yeah. That's ridiculous. It's so sad that we've gotten to that place. And I just don't think you can do that. I think you have to respect others' points of view. You don't have to agree with them, but you don't have to hate on them because they don't share your values or your worldview.
People attach a lot of emotion to politics and religion and things like that.
Yeah, they really do. It's so primitive. It's so emotional. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's unnecessary. I've gotten to a place where I don't attach emotions to politics or religion most of the time. But I can't. Nobody's perfect. Yeah,
and I get emotional about certain issues. But I try to keep that to myself. But yeah, and I think when people are feeling threatened or feeling anxiety, that it gets so much more intense. And I see a lot of that right now.
Yeah, and you can't really discuss anything when you're in that state of mind.
No, you can't.
You have to cool off because you can't. When I get angry, I can't think.
Same here.
I don't know if you can, but
yeah, and that's something that I've struggled with, like a lot of people, because there are so many times in our lives when you're justified at being really ticked off about something, but the true test is trying to keep a cool head. That's something that I think we all have to, not all of us, but most of us have to work at. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know, I would say all of us.
Yeah. Believe me, I've had my moments.
What are things that concern you in I guess, or just in general in society, like not necessarily in your personal life, but what are things that concern you, like related to, you meet a lot of different people on a daily basis and you listen to all these perspectives, and that's gotta bring you some wisdom. It's gotta bring you some sort of enrichment as far as your opinions and your assessment of the world. You're kind of a sociologist without even, if you're not even trying to be.
Yeah, I actually minored in sociology. It's funny you say that. I'll tell you, it's easy to be negative and see things cynically, but there are more things right than wrong around the world. Now, that said, the big thing that concerns me locally is the poverty. There's so much poverty in this city. It's just incredible. Like huge swaths of this city are like a third world country, and I don't see a lot of political will to do much about that. And that concerns me, that we have so many kids in this city on free or reduced lunch. Half the kids in the schools are on free or reduced lunch. 50%.
That's a lot of kids.
Yeah. And, it's
like 500,000 kids.
Right. That's a lot of poverty. So on the one hand, we have a lot of growth in this city, in this area, in this part of the country. A lot of new jobs hopefully coming in. But then we also have this really difficult problem. And it's tied up with our school issues, our race issues, our public safety issues. But there's no agenda. There's no collective agreement that we need to do something about that. I mean, there have been sort of initiatives around the edges of that.
Yeah.
But not that fundamental problem.
Yeah.
And pulling people out of poverty is incredibly difficult and expensive. So that's why we are not seeing.
One of the first things I hear around here when you when somebody talks about poverty or helping the impoverished is that, well, if you help them, kind of like if you help them or if you give them money, then you're just going to make them lazy or they need to help themselves or these kinds of things. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't really have an opinion on it because I don't know. It's like, maybe not. But I know, like you were saying, giving people the benefit of the doubt that they're being intellectually honest is, I also know that people really are trying to have a good life.
Yeah.
They're not trying to like do the system in, and that's not their interest. You know, they're not trying to do you in. Most people are just trying to live and figure things out like everybody else.
Right.
You know,
that's been my experience. Sure.
Yeah. And so would you say the education is like, it's fun, it's rooted in education? Because that would fix a lot of things, wouldn't it?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I don't think when you talk to teachers, they'll say that people are going at it backward. You can't fix the schools until you fix poverty. You know, you need to start with the conditions that are sending kids to school without lunch and without, you know, a good night's sleep and without good clothes. And they can't learn in those conditions. It's just this whole Gordian...
It's like a chicken and the egg thing.
Yeah. But it's this whole kind of Gordian knot that we haven't figured out how to untie. You know, generational poverty, family breakdown, all the social disorder that goes with that, violence, you know.
Yeah. Did you grow up in a stable household?
Yeah, although, I mean, my parents got divorced when I was 11. So that goes back to the Generation X, you know, general bitterness about life. But yeah, no, they got divorced when I was 11.
How did that affect you?
Pretty deeply.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have siblings?
I have a brother.
How did it affect him?
Not as deeply.
Oh,
I mean, it did, but he has a really mild form of autism. He has Asperger's syndrome. And
he's a genius.
He's like a nerdy, smart guy with no social skills, you know. But one of the things about that how it tends to affect people is they're emotionally, they don't have some of the emotional highs and lows that the rest of us kind of have. He's always kind of on an even keel. Not a lot really bothers him. It's really interesting. So their divorce hit, you know, it affected me, I think, even more than it did him. But he, you know, and he still lives up in Ohio near my dad. My mom's passed away now. My dad and my stepmom. But yeah. And my husband's, you know, he grew up a child of divorce too. So when you come out of that background, it gives you a lot more incentive to try to keep your own family together. Because you just don't want to repeat that with your own kids.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And Patricia and I, my wife, and I, we both feel that way because we both come from not the ideal household.
Yeah.
I think very few people do.
Right.
So that gives me this idea that maybe there's something wrong with the whole model to begin with.
The nuclear family?
Yeah, I know there's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why as soon as people get enough money, they start hiring people to help.
Oh, yeah, sure.
That's why. Because there used to be abuelita, grandma, and mom.
Oh, God,
and
yeah.
sister.
Exactly. We've lost that. And it's so hard to do it all yourself. And it puts so much strain on a marriage that I think that's why a lot of people split up, frankly. Like, they just, it's just too heavy a burden for two people to carry together by themselves.
Yeah. I feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I've had to improvise all these ways to
Yeah.
deal with it and cope. And
Yeah.
I don't work very much right now, and so that puts a financial strain on us, because things are very tight. I could work more, but then the development of my kids would be suffering, and that's just not worth it at all. So did the divorce affect your education, like at school? Like, so this is like, let's say, an impoverishment of emotional stability that you had.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I didn't even realize this until recently when I was reading about the long-term effects of children of divorce. And if your parents basically the literature will show that if your parents got a divorce, even if they divorced amicably and they worked out decent custody, all that, but if you grew up with that you have experienced abandonment. And I never thought that way about myself, because I never thought I was abandoned. My dad stayed in town, even though he could have taken a job somewhere else, so that he could see me and my brother every week. We grew up seeing him all the time, but we lived with my mom. But, existentially, children that have been through that have experienced abandonment. So that kind of blew my mind when I started thinking about what that meant for me and my brother. And, there's something about that experience that has like a sleeper effect on kids that, it's a pretty deep mark. So I'm still kind of thinking through that, actually. And I was 11 when that happened. It's kind of funny.
when I was 11, I had a mental breakdown, and it was right around.
Really?
And it was right around the time that my parents were splitting up. So I know it didn't ring a bell until you said that about poverty. Which one comes first, poverty or, in order to fix things, poverty or fixing the education situation? Because I could no longer focus at school.
Sure.
Because from that point on, I had real problems. I had adult problems, and you want me to figure out this algebra problem.
Right.
I just couldn't put myself there. I couldn't get back into the classroom.
Right.
Because I had real other problems that maybe if the school, if there's a situation where they would ask me about it or help me with that, then we can take care of that first and then go on.
Yeah.
You mentioned you're reading a book. I wanted to ask you, like, what have you been reading lately? Or do you have time to read?
We get a ton of books. There's one that this local author wrote about the guy that founded Chamblin's Book Mine. It's called We Are All Used Books.
Who? Ron?
Ron Chamblin. Yeah. Tim Gilmore wrote this book about him called We Are All Used Books. That I thought that was, and I was looking through that book recently because it was he just did a series of conversations with him, kind of like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's a good way to look at humanity.
Yeah.
We are all used books.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
What's the author's name?
Gilmore.
Okay, Gilmore.
Yeah. He's a local author and professor.
Yeah, I'll check it out. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, they had a party to celebrate 40 years of that independent bookstore, and they had a block party outside, and he did a reading from his book. Yeah, Ron.
I always get along with Ron when I run into him, and we talk, and I look at his Bernie Sanders bumper stickers on his car and all that kind of stuff. We've talked politics before, and we've talked about books and writing. And he said he tried writing. Like, he's tried it, but he says he keeps repeating himself, so he just quit.
Right.
And but I call him the book minotaur, because Chamblin. If you go to Chamblin, it's like a maze in there.
Yeah.
So he's like the used book minotaur.
He is. Yeah.
Running through there with his horns in his head.
Exactly. Yeah. I know. And there's pictures of him from the 70s when he launched the whole thing, that are kind of fun to look at. Every city has people like that make a city kind of go in a cultural way.
Yeah.
And everywhere I've lived, it's always been interesting to see how people like that make their mark.
And do you watch many movies?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Like, what do you like to watch?
Oh, I'll watch any movie except horror. My kids love horror movies. I hate horror movies.
There's no more horror movies. What is that?
I know.
Like what?
They love horror movies. I that's the only kind of movie I don't really like. Mm-hmm. Although, I'll watch classics like The Shining and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, gosh, I love films. I'm a real movie kind of. I made a movie. Although it was a documentary.
What was the movie you made?
It's called The 904. It was about Jacksonville's status as the murder capital of Florida.
When did you make this film?
Several years ago.
I think I know this.
Yeah.
And what can you tell me like what you learned from that? I haven't seen the film.
What did I learn from that?
Yeah.
Don't make a movie. No.
It's time consuming.
Oh, it's yeah. No, I'm glad I did it. But yeah, if I had known what it was going to involve, I probably wouldn't have ever started. It was a nightmare.
Would you ever do it again?
If somebody handed me a check, sure.
Like a lot of money to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Because then you would have the right staff, and
Right.
you'd have you
Yeah.
could hire somebody who's made movies before.
Yeah.
And they could figure it all out. They're
Right.
like, okay, we have this crew and whatnot.
Right. But it was
that's a
basically
lot of money.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we made it for very little money, me and two other people. So 2 other
Yeah.
guys.
I worked on a film like that, and when I worked on this film, I decided that people who continually work on films are really masochistic, and like
Yeah.
masochists are crazy, like because the amount of time that it takes
Yeah.
is just. I mean, I'm talking about like 1,000 hours or.
Yeah, no, it's nuts. And when HBO was here, I had a bit part in that movie, Recount, about the 2000 recount. And they shot all night. I mean, you would go to the set and you'd be there all night. And at about 4 a.m, they'd bring out this huge vat of coffee. I think I told you this last time I was here. They'd bring out this huge vat of coffee for everybody like it was nothing. I mean, it was as big as,
Yeah.
it was this high.
Hollywood has got it down.
It was a machine. Like they had it down. Their whole schedule, everything.
I lived in Springfield for I don't know, 13 years. In the house across from me, they did a reality show in the house on the corner across from me. And they came in, these trucks came in when they decided that they were going to do it in this house. And they transformed the house and they transformed the yard in like 2 days. And there was furniture in this house that was vacant. It was painted, et cetera, et cetera. And then they filmed for a couple of weeks. And when they were done, I kid you not, in a day, everything was taken out.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the circus coming to town.
They're better than the circus. The military studied film crews, by the way.
They should. That's so true.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They did.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. They did because of the efficiency and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they don't mess around.
No. So, how much time do you have?
I got to go.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Is there anything else you'd like to leave me with? Like you'd like to tell people about that you're doing? I saw you on the cover of Folio.
Wasn't that nice? Thank
Yeah.
you, Folio. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was exciting.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that was really cool. I'll check one off my list with that one.
I haven't read the article, but I'll check it out.
Yeah, it was great.
All right, cool. I look forward to listening to more of your show and yelling at the radio from time to time.
Call. Be a
And call.
guest.
You know, I've
Come
called.
be a guest.
I have little
when
kids.
you have a show.
I have little kids. I can't call. And I want to sometimes, you know.
Are you doing a big show sometime soon? You should come.
I don't know. I'll look.
You should come and talk about it.
Because I don't know what I'm doing.
You don't know what you're doing.
No.
Come and talk about it and then perform.
Okay.
You know, the day or two before.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
Cool.
Excellent. All right.
All right.
It was good to see you.
You too.